Off record. Got it. Okay.
Okay. Well, we have 6 of us. We got 2 minutes to go.
Well, it's early yet. Some people will tune in later.
Did you have trouble getting on?
No,
No?
not the new, Steve sent the new web connection.
Link,
Yeah, you
right.
saw that.
I just sent it a minute ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We realized we had a problem.
Yep. We went to the memorial service for Bernie Brownstein yesterday. It was nicely done. Cantor did a good job.
Okay. He usually does.
He always does.
Yes, he does. After 3 rabbis, he should
Yeah.
know.
You know, when who was it? It was when my son died, and the rabbi in San Diego, the woman rabbi, and she had to go up to Los Angeles. Some mother was ill or whatever.
Mm.
And she told me that I could do the unveiling, that there wasn't any real service for it.
Mm.
Look up the prayers and do it. And I did. My husband was out of town. I did it because my son's wife, who was from Austria, was in the United States in town that day. And that weekend, and so I did it for her, so she would be able to be there. And my husband said, just do it. So I dug up some high holiday prayers from Yom Kippur, and I put some prayers around it and all that, and I did it. But I think weddings are like that. There's no real wedding service, and I'm not sure about the funerals either. There's certain prayers that you obviously say,
Right.
like,
You
don't need a rabbi for
Mhm.
Mishaberach either.
No, you don't.
right. Yeah, it's
I
interesting.
found that one out.
Okay, Steve, tell us when we're ready to do
I'm ready when you are.
I'm ready. Let's get the show on the
All
road.
right. We are on page 101.
Blessings, not the blessings before the Torah.
We'll do that in just a second, but I wanted to explain that Marcia's going to be leading us today. I believe the rabbi is coming back tonight or tomorrow.
I
Or
think
they'll lead next
I
week.
think it's today sometime. Yeah.
Sometime. Yeah. So, and there's Sai.
Yes, good.
So let's go ahead and do the blessing and then we can proceed. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lazot divrei Torah.
Blessed are you,
Blessed are you, Adonai our God, ruler of the
ruler
world,
of the world.
who has sanctified us with your commandments, commanded us in your word, engage in the words of Torah. Amen. Okay, everyone, have a great, Marcia, it's all yours, kiddo.
Okay, well, Pam, I think, said that she was going to be out of town. I vaguely remember, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. All right. In reading this, I really felt that it was lacking in much depth on this whole thing. It was like he just wanted to get done with it, And so the first Parak Aleph discusses redemption from sin through sacrifices of various sorts of in the sanctuary, and then moving on to in Parak Bet, we move on to other kinds of sacrifices. So why don't we start by reading it? Minya, will you like to start?
Okay, I was just looking to see where
101 on the bottom.
101
No, I meant
right
because
hand
you
side.
mentioned Parak Aleph. I was going back to look to see where that was, but
Yeah, that's one that just keeps talking about how to make good if you have sinned. Okay, which this will continue to do. Yeah,
defining sin in Jewish tradition. Parsha Vayikra not only speaks of 5 different kinds of sacrifices to be offered by the people and their leaders, but it also identifies the reasons for offering sacrifices. Many were presented as gifts to bring the worshiper closer to God and to express thanks for harvests, festivals, personal celebrations, good fortune, healing in time of sickness, or the achievement of peaceful relations between individuals and nations. Among the many different kinds of sacrifices are those having to do with the sins of the people of Israel or of individuals. Parsha Vayikra speaks of the Olah offering and the Hatat and Asham sacrifices as means of achieving relief from guilty feelings and forgiveness from God for wrongdoing. In identifying forms of behavior that require offerings at the temple, the Torah and those who interpret it present us with a unique definition of sin. For example, the Olah, or burnt offering, the first sacrifice mentioned in our Torah portion, is to be given by all people. The Torah, however, does not provide a reason for the offering. It is Rabbi Simeon ben Yochai, a student of the famous Rabbi Akiba and leader of the Jewish community in the land of Israel, just after the destruction of the temple, who teaches that the Olah offering is given for sinful thoughts and intentions, even if they are not carried out. Nachmanides agrees, explaining that it is natural for human beings to have all kinds of evil thoughts. We think of cheating our neighbors, of twisting the truth to suit our selfish purposes, of secretly taking that which does not belong to us, of committing sexual offenses. Many different thoughts and intentions rise in our minds. For Nachmanides, these secret thoughts, known only to God, are the first level of sin. They are the first inclinations that lead to wrongdoing. For that reason, one offers the Olah as a means of removing any guilt for such reflections or intentions. Sinful thoughts. Rabbi Bachya ben Asher, author of Kad HaKemach, commenting on the rabbinic observation that sinful thoughts are more injurious than the sin itself. It is more difficult to withdraw from sinful thoughts, for habitually thinking about a sin will ultimately lead to its commission. He also notes the opinion of others that when one plans to commit a sin, one actually prepares oneself to do more than one sin. For example, if one thinks of stealing or robbing, one prepares oneself even to kill in order to achieve one's desires.
Okay, so let's stop with the first sin here that they're discussing. So what do you think about this particular sin? Have fun.
I think that it is ridiculous that you cannot mind control people, that they will always have thoughts in their mind that the rabbis would consider sinful, and yet the mere fact that they simply think about it but do not act on it because they do have a conscience or something that stops them from acting on it. Therefore, I don't feel it should be considered a sin. When a man sees a beautiful girl walking by and he reacts to it, he doesn't go ahead and rape her necessarily. But the point is, if he doesn't go ahead and act on it, has he committed a sin? Maybe it is simply a biological reaction of seeing a beautiful woman. He can't help himself. Why should that be considered sinful? If he were to actually commit the physical act of harming her, then I would say, yes, that's sinful. But then simply thinking about it, we all have thoughts over the course of 24 hours that someone would consider to be sinful. You can be envious of someone. Is that a sin? Can you be, jealous or whatever? It's the fact that one thinks, as far as I'm concerned, does not make it a sin. And I totally disagree there.
Okay, Minya and then Richard.
Jimmy Carter.
Yep.
Yeah. He sinned only in his heart. Yeah.
Busted in his mind, right?
So that's what made me think of him when I was reading this, because I thought he said the same thing. He had lust in his heart, but that didn't mean he had to act on it.
Yeah, right.
Right. And Richard, what were you gonna say?
I think what they're talking about is just the thought of something, like for instance, I can go see a beautiful woman and she walks by and says, oh, she's a very attractive woman, and that's it.
Yeah.
But I can think, ooh, I want to make it bad. Ooh, that's supposedly a sin that God wants you to have a sin offering for. So there's two different things. One is to think about, oh, that's a beautiful woman, and the
All
other
right.
is, which
So
is just,
what about,
yeah,
you
it's
know,
a beautiful woman. And the other is, oh, I wanna ask her if she wants to go to bed with me. That's a sin.
moving away from the sexual part, which everybody went to.
Or anything, you know.
No, but if you saw something that wasn't yours and you knew that it wasn't and you took it, okay,
That's different. That's a
It's
physical.
acting on it.
that's
you
a theft.
acted on it, right? But you can look at it and say, what should I do about that? You know, and there's the proper thing to do, try to find the owner if possible, and that kind of stuff, So, Cy,
I think we have another problem in which we act upon certain things that you may think is sinful, but I don't. And that's a bigger problem. And I think that most of the things that occur in the world that I think are sinful, the people who are performing those acts do not think they're sinful, and so on.
eye of the beholder, sort of, right?
Right.
So and when I got done reading the whole thing and trying to research it online, I didn't get a whole too far. I started to think about when this was written, what is sin then and what is sin now?
Yeah.
And that to me was a biggie, because our conception, or what we think of as sinful now, not sin, as ordinary, would be considered sinful back many years ago, even from when we were kids, when things that, the way we would dress then, or the way we would act then. I mean, respect for adults or parents, all that stuff has changed,
Yeah. I'm
Richard,
thinking-
Richard, and then Evelyn, yeah.
Oh, I agree with you. It's very relative. I mean, just think of the idea of abortion in our country. There are some people who think it's a horrible sin, and there's others who don't think it's a sin. So it's relative, and now that abortion has been the law of the federal government, or the previous Supreme Court said it was okay to have abortion. Now it's up to the states to decide. Some states say it's horrible, and anybody who thinks about it or tries to even go out of the state is going to end to have an abortion, is going to end up in jail. That this is a terrible crime.
And all these senators,
Sin is also relative.
yeah, these people who are running for Senate are talking about national abortion at this point. Evelyn?
Well, to continue with Richard, to overcome that, the article in the Wall Street Journal last week said something that the abortion pill was being distributed widely now, and this was to counteract the actual physical abortion that a physician would commit as such. But I wanted to comment about governments themselves who commit what we would consider sins. They withhold information, or they say, I will not supply you with arms unless you do this for me. Is that not considered a sin? I'm thinking of our government today. And so there are many ways of looking at sin: individual acts, or community acts, or national acts that could be considered sinful. And where do you draw the line?
I think they're talking about those sins that are delineated in Leviticus, the Torah sins. Okay.
Torah sins. Well, again, as you said, life has changed in 4,000 years. And so
it's changed in my 84 years that I am. I see things now that never would have been, flown years ago. Donna?
Yeah, I'm just saying yes to you here. Things that are going on today, I just, things that even my grandchildren do, I just shake my head at because I would never have considered that, to do that. And, some people did, but, people all around the schools and everything, they live with one another.
Right, cohabitation, exactly.
Absolutely. And it's, it's an okay thing to do. It's a natural thing to do. And I just shake my head and I say, wow, I'm glad, I'm glad I lived, I guess, when I did. But then my mother says the same thing. So I think every generation, there are things that the previous generation wouldn't do, or that the previous generation did do. So,
And then our whole technology that has come about in the last
yes,
few years.
absolutely. Yeah, I'll be right back.
Steve?
Our morals have changed dramatically. When our grandparents were parents.
Lost the song.
Parents, morals were very strict. And, if you didn't do it, you got punished. So, but then again, morality in ancient times was totally different from today. And, I think it's just the way the world has evolved. These sins have evolved as well.
Think so too. Yeah, I don't know. And then again, also, I had to think about Reform versus Orthodox Judaism and what is acceptable in Reform Judaism that we would, people would be totally shunned. People are totally shunned if they are Orthodox Jews for acting the way Reform Jews act. And, they won't even accept that it's a proper way to behave, they would just say you're not part of our community, right?
Mm.
All right, let us do the second kind of sin and we'll go back and kind of tie it all together. Okay. Do you want to continue, Menu?
I can unless someone else wants to read.
Would you rather read, Evelyn, or let Menu hang?
Let me, and then I'll take over.
Yeah, it's not the longest section. Okay.
Second kind of sin defined in this Torah portion occurs when a person unintentionally breaks the law. Examples of this kind of sin: one may harvest but forget to leave a portion for the poor and needing. One may neglect paying a worker at the end of the day, or one may accidentally eat of food prohibited by the Torah. Commenting on the seriousness of unintentional sin, Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch writes, "The sinner, through error, is one who sins from carelessness. In other words, at the moment of omission, that person did not take full care, with heart and soul, that the act be in keeping with the Torah and the commandments, because the person was not, in the words of the prophet Isaiah, concerned about my word, because one has not been careful and thoughtful, but lackadaisical in carrying out God's commandments. One's actions are considered sinful, and one is required to bring a sacrifice and to offer it in order to gain forgiveness." Agreeing with Hirsch, Nehama Leibowitz states that it is no excuse that the sinner had no evil intention and that it was merely forgetfulness, just carelessness and irresponsibility. She also notes that the Torah clearly includes priests and other leaders in its concern for unintentional sins. Leibowitz argues that the greater the person, the greater the responsibility. Each negligence, each slip of the mind, each indiscretion, each error borders on deliberate wrongdoing.
I disagree.
Well, let's wait till she finishes. Okay. Okay, where are we? Sins of a lead at the box?
Yes. An acknowledged leader must be even more careful than ordinary people, not to fall into the trap of wrongdoing. Even sins committed unintentionally may lead others to do evil, for others are eager to point to such a person as their example when they sin. In other words, wrongdoings, even those committed in error or by accident, have serious consequences. They are not to be whitewashed or treated lightly as if they had no impact on others. Jewish tradition does not permit one to run away from the responsibility for one's actions. The Torah commands those who unintentionally sin to bring a hatat, or sin offering, to God.
Okay, so now, Evelyn, you were
Oh.
going to say,
Well, we assume that we all have our act together, our mind is working, and that we are, operating at 100%, 24 hours a day, 24/7, the whole year. And yet, even young people are forgetful. Our mind does not always work the way it should. And as we get older, we become much more forgetful. I have Post-its on my kitchen counter because I don't always remember what I'm scheduled to do for that day. And as I accomplish each task, I take the Post-its and dump it in the circular file. Okay, this is part of the mind, the functioning of every day. And it is ridiculous to assume that we all function at a high level of cognition every moment of the day. And it's something that is inadvertently done, unintentionally, no harm intended, to me does not seem to be something that is sinful. Whether you forget someone's birthday to acknowledge, or whatever kindness, you forget to pick somebody up even though you promised it, it's happened. There are so many things that occur in our daily lives that people do forget. And so I personally don't feel that this should be considered a sin. Let's see how somebody else feels about it.
what are you thinking about? Richard?
Sure.
Well, the sin of omission, that's what we're talking about. Forgetting about things was the basis of malpractice law. And your omission may harm somebody.
But Richard, are you talking of a sin of omission being intentional sin of omission?
No. Most actors who commit this malpractice don't do it intentionally.
Well, I'm thinking of, I used to tell my kids that,
I personally was never I never had my very long
oh, you're
career.
talking about it.
I never had malpractice, but that doesn't mean that I was perfect. It just meant people who liked me didn't sue me. But we all have omissions, as you said. We forget about a birthday, and Torah considers that a sin of forgetfulness. And maybe because we forget a birthday, we hurt somebody's feelings, or an omission, we are forgetting about ordering a lab test, and a patient has a serious consequence or even dies as a result of it. That's, I think, what the Torah is talking about. They're talking about sins that.
Oh, they're talking about being forgetting. They talk about forgetfulness.
Because we forget, because we don't do it, may cause harm at some time in the future. And that's.
I don't think they're talking about malpractice, the kind of stuff.
No, with malpractice, I'm saying they're talking about omission, forgetfulness, not doing things that you're supposed to do.
But I think you agree with Evelyn that it's not really a sin.
No, I'm saying from a Torah standpoint, whether I think about it or not, from the Torah, I'm looking at the Torah standpoint. That's a sin. And yeah, I guess we could call it sort of I don't know if I'd call it a sin. I'd say it's an omission, and I should not have omitted that. I should not have forgotten that that birthday card to Evelyn. Now she's really pissed off at me.
Birthday's next week, by the way.
February 29th, Evelyn.
Happy birthday.
Thank you, thank you. No, I think my point was that the mind does not always function at the most efficient. And that either illness or some circumstance that causes a distraction of one sort or another changes the way that individual operates at that particular time. And if he's not functioning at the way the Torah has dictated, then his omission to do something becomes a sin. And I don't believe that we should be held accountable for, even in the case of, let's say, surgery, where the surgeon leaves a sponge in the abdominal cavity because he got careless. Obviously, I think the surgeon usually does things carefully by rote and by routine. If something like that happens, he was either distracted, his mind was on something else, maybe his wife was divorcing him, whatever it was, something happened that made him lose that regime, that routine that he normally does. And so there was this accidental malpractice that occurred. Well, it happens. We are human. We are not perfect all the time. And therefore, do we live in a constant state of sin because we didn't do this and we didn't do that? I don't want to live with a guilt complex all of my life. That's no way to live as far as I'm concerned. And the Torah has made so many restrictions that I think it negates its purpose, to be perfectly honest.
So on high holidays, when we do that whole for this, forgive me for this and forgive me for the other thing, yeah, right. We're sort of doing a whole collection
A
of
community. It's a community.
as a community, but as all those things that we didn't even know we were doing them, we're sorry we did them, kind of thing. You know, I think it, in a way, that's a good thing, you know, or even for when you slight somebody and you didn't really mean to slight them, you know. You walk by and I always, this is bad for me. I mean, I'll tune something out and I won't say hello as I go past a friend. And then afterwards I say, oh, I feel bad about that, you know. But I can't keep going back and making amends all over. So at least I have that one time at high holidays, you know, that I can try, you know.
Well, you relieve yourself of that sense of guilt.
Well, that's what this
If
comes
the
up.
individual that you presumably did harm,
Yeah.
how do you handle that?
Yeah. We were talking about sins of omission, and when my kids would forget to tell me something, I say, well, that's a sin of omission, but it's just as bad as that sin of commission because you're basically lying to me because you didn't tell me about it, you know. So
Yeah.
to me, that was almost as bad as having done the deed, you know, which they had done but didn't want to admit to, you know, so kind of thing. So, but yeah, so, and again, we're going back to the change in society between now and then. It was a much more simplistic life, I think, what they were leading when the Torah was written. And, you know, so they, you know, they didn't have the world about them the way we did. Maybe that's an excuse, I don't know, but there are certain things that you know, you don't want to do in life, you know, that is a definite sin, but there are things that you can't help nowadays, you know, with all the things that are going on around us. Yes, Steve.
But with Reform Judaism, since it was started,
Yeah.
relieved us of those issues that we're discussing today because they're not considered as, I would say, serious as they were back then. So, you know, we live in today's society, not in the past. And I think that's how Reform Judaism sees it.
Hi Pam, thank you for joining us.
Sorry
Sorry.
I'm late, got
No,
caught
that's
up with
okay.
something.
Was the link wrong? Did you find the link wrong as well?
No, the
Oh.
link was fine, I just got caught up in something else and
Okay, all right, good, good, good. We're on page 103.
Yeah, and so these were a list of sins that when I was reading through here, I guess maybe it'll come up, I don't know. Withholding evidence, promises not kept, dealing falsely, like with deposits, pledges, theft, that to me is more intentional. Where you don't give somebody back a deposit, or you pledged to do something and you didn't do it, or you stole something. That's a real sin, to my mind, and that doesn't change over the centuries. Lost articles, unfair treatment, those are things that I think are still viable sins in my mind. I don't know if you think that about it. To have a guy come to the house and do work, and you say to him, "Oh, let me pay you next week." That's not right. He did the work. He should get his pay when he expected to get the pay. Kind of thing. So what I read was that the only vow that is inexcusable is sins against God, sins of speaking against God, basically. And
Wow.
well, that's a tough sin to deal with, I think.
This is Steve.
Donna?
I already muted her.
Oh, good. All right. All right, let us continue. I'm gonna let everyone start now and give you a timeout there. So, we're in addition.
In addition to defining sins committed in thought or by error, the Torah also specifies other wrongdoings for which one must present an asham or guilt offering. These sins include: 1, withholding evidence from a court by refusing to be a witness; 2, promising to do something or making an oath and then failing to keep it; 3, dealing falsely with another person in matters having to do with deposits, pledges, theft, unfair treatment, or lost articles. All of these are considered serious violations of Torah. Commenting on the sin of withholding evidence from a court, Abraham Chill observes that since justice is the foundation of society, anyone who deliberately impedes justice is thereby guilty of perpetrating an act of injustice. If one could give testimony that would help a court of justice come to a decision, but fails to do so, that person has committed a sin. Rabbi Hizda asks the question, what does the Torah mean when it uses the terms unfair treatment and theft? He answers by pointing out that a person must not say to a neighbor, "I have something belonging to you, but I will wait until tomorrow to return it." Hizda defines such behavior as the sin of unfair treatment. If a person says to another, "I have something belonging to you, but I will not return it," that, says Hizda, is the sin of theft. For such,
Right, all right, maybe we should go on. Go ahead, never mind, go ahead.
okay. For such wrongdoings, it is not enough for the sinner to bring a sacrifice to the temple. The Torah clearly states that the guilty person shall repay the principal amount and add a fifth to it. So the injured party will be fully compensated for any losses. Jewish traditions insist on appropriate repayment of stolen property before any offerings are acceptable to God. This first Torah portion of Leviticus offers a significant definition of sin in Jewish tradition. It includes wrongdoings that result from thoughtlessness and careless error, from accidentally misleading others, from deliberately withholding evidence, lying, robbing, or treating others unfairly. This definition is important because it demonstrates the high ethical principles that form the basis of Jewish tradition. Okay, my first comment is that many of these requirements have been incorporated into civil law. And so if you withhold evidence, you can be held accountable for it by law. So that there's a fine line there where it becomes civil law and well, how do you distinguish between the two?
Okay. Do
Pam,
you think part
Pam
of
has her
this was
hands up.
Pam
What?
has her hand up.
who?
Pam,
Pam, go ahead. I didn't. see-
I have a follow-up question for that. If it says it's accidentally, how did they phrase it? Accidentally misleading. Do we consider that a sin? Accidentally misleading?
Well, it could be, yeah.
To me, that's just, it's an accident. It's not, to me, if someone had purpose to mislead you is one thing, but accidentally misleading.
Well, it depends on the interpretation. The one who suffers from it would say you did it deliberately. The one who did it accidentally said, oh, I had a lapse of memory or something like that, and so didn't. And so does it become a court of law then to decide who was right and who was wrong? I mean, you reach a point where everything is subject to litigation at this point, and I don't know.
I could, go ahead, Minya. And then
I wish there was another word for sin, the way we're discussing this today,
Yeah.
because to me, you murder someone, that's a sin. If you forget to send someone a birthday card, that's not a sin. I mean, it may be, you could be sorry for what you did, but it's not in the category of something as severe as murder.
It's an oversight.
That's right. So it really is
Yeah.
not a sin.
Yeah, good term.
I think
oversight.
more of it as if we think about what's on the 10 Commandments, where you shall not do things. And those are in a category of them by themselves, away from doing things like forgetting a birthday card.
Well, so, Sai, did you have something first?
Yes. I was going to comment on the fact that there are hundreds and thousands of sins. The sins are being performed every single day, and your sin is my good thing. But my point is, what has that got to do with sacrifices? What's a sin got to do with a sacrifice? That's the part I don't understand in the Bible.
We don't, they used to sacrifice to be forgiven for their sins when they had the sanctuary.
What does that mean when you sacrifice? What does it mean?
Well, by killing the animal and incinerating it, to them, their way of thinking was that negated whatever sin that had been committed. It's a rather,
Part of it was the value of the
That
animal.
should be the discussion.
Well, but that was what they did in Torah.
That
Richard?
should be the discussion.
Richard?
Well, the idea of sacrifice really predates the Jewish religion way
That's
back.
what we're talking about.
Sacrificing in order to appease the gods. Even human sacrifices were done in man to sacrifice to appease the gods. And Minya, what happened forgetting your card is a sin of omission. And let's say, for sakes, that the person who really likes you and you forgot to send and is somewhat mentally unstable and you forgot to send that card, and they got very upset and they said, nobody loves me, and kills themselves because of that.
Oh, that's terrible.
Right.
That's crazy, actually.
Because there was a sin of admission that the person maybe would not have done that if they had gotten that card and said, oh, someone actually does love me. That, I
believe-
mean, that's what the Bible is saying. I would not say that caused the problem, but I think that's what the Torah is trying to tell us. It says that if you do something that admission of or something, that's a sin because it may harm somebody. I think that's what they're implying. At least that's my thoughts on it. Not that it's a true something bad.
So if I forget to turn the lights on, and
You have to go, well, 3,000 years ago, you have to go to the priest and say, okay, I'm giving you my best cow. Here, take it for a sacrifice. So the person who I forgot to give the gift to will be happy with me.
but you we're looking, what you started to say before, Richard, was that we're looking what was when the Torah was written, it was a different time. It was a time
Right.
sacrifice, and that's what
many years ago. Yeah.
But we tried to over the years.
Whoa, one at a time, please.
Over the years that we tried to modernize it to make it more acceptable. We're not having barbecues in the backyard for sin omission, expiation or whatever it is, so we have to try to make up for whatever sin we think of as sins in a more modern way. So we've gone past the sacrifice thing. I think we did that a couple thousand years ago, maybe. I don't know when it happened. I guess when the temples were destroyed, right? And then there was no place to do a centralized.
Basically 70 AD, when they destroyed the temple, that was the
Second temple.
sacrifices.
Yeah, so then it was
Only the temple where they did the sacrifices wasn't in the
right.
Torah. Synagogues started developing in Israel sometime around 3000 BCE.
Right.
No,
But
300
we don't do that
BCE.
anymore.
300
Okay,
BCE.
so when you do commit a sin, let's go back. When we commit a sin, some of us have guilt and some of us don't have guilt, And, I mean, and this thing about what we didn't, it's the people who have guilt, I think, feel better for making good on their sin, trying to repair what they have done. And I think that's important. Minya,
I looked up sin in the dictionary
okay.
and found that most of the words had to do with God. And if you do something to offend God, that is the level of what a sin is. They have here, may God forgive you for your sins. And the other words they use, this is a thesaurus, an ungodly act, an immoral act, an irreligious act, sinfulness, transgression, but they're all against things that you would assume God would not want you to do. It's a sin, the way she wastes money. So in this case, sin is shame or disgrace. But they all seem to be, when you use the word sin, at a higher level than just going back to the birthday card again, just the birthday card. That's why I say there has to be another word than sin when you're referring to wrongdoing, because the level is so different between a really serious sin, that's something God would not want you to do, or buy a bag of potato chips and eat it because you're not allowed to anymore. That would not be considered a sin. That would just be something, call that an omission. You know that's the right thing to do, but you do it anyway.
I
Yeah,
think
or
the
the heart
reason,
failure.
the reason we're talking about this as sin is all of Leviticus, and I went through it page by page. Thou shalt not, thou shalt not, thou shalt not, all the way through till just about the end. And this is what God told Moses. So we're referring to all these itty bitty basically mini commandments of everyday life, basically. You know, where your skirt should stop, where, what you do on a Friday night, when, the Shabbos, the whole thing, everything is in there. And, or a lot of it is in that one Leviticus thing. It's one after another after another. And so we're talking about that. Now that's different than what you're saying, Minya. When we're talking about sin, we're talking about big time sin, not necessarily any
Little, small time sin.
Yeah. Pam?
Well, can you say that anything that has a thou shall not is a sin?
Well, there's also thou shalt, and if you don't do the thou shalts, that's a sin, I suppose, too.
Well, I think we're talking about the same thing, but yeah.
Richard?
And relative to your thou shalt not, for instance, Minya brought up the idea of eating potato chips. Well, I can eat a potato chip. Nothing happens. I don't gain weight or
You
anything.
eat just one?
Oh, no, eat the whole bag. You got to eat the whole little bag. I mean, you can't eat just one. But if I had congestive heart failure, it can pull me over to the edge and over the precipice and get heart failure, and even kill you. So, which is a sin? Am I eating the potato chips because I wanted them, or eating the potato chips and knowing that I shouldn't eat them because I'm going to get heart failure?
I don't think either, because
That may be considered a sin because I'm potentially sacrificing my life for a bag of salt and sugar.
fat.
That's something to think about.
Sorry.
Well, going back to Minya's thinking, when you think of God in terms of sin, he was a big, he performed a lot of sin. For example, when he flooded the world, I think that was kind of sinful. When he killed all the Egyptian males prior to the Jews leaving Egypt, that was pretty sinful, and so on and so forth. So what is sin? What is it? Does it apply only to people, or does God do a little bit of that as well?
Well,
Evelyn?
I'm just thinking, when you're thinking of God as being this omnipotent, wonderful creation, and then when you stop and think of what God did to the Egyptians, he killed them, he destroyed them, he destroyed their society in order to have the Hebrews come out. He had destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. You stop and say, this is a vengeful God. These are the traits. Was that not sinful? And when he is dictating to man to do this and to do that, and yet God did these, what he should be considering as deplorable acts and sinful acts. So how do you reconcile the two, the concept of a God that is perfect and the concept of a God as it is written, who has very human traits, very imperfect traits? And since God fashioned man after himself, then we are worshiping a God that is hardly perfect. And so while it sounds sacrilegious, I think we have to get in our minds that maybe that God that was written in the Torah is not a true representation of the God that should be. So it's a problem. It's a problem.
Evelyn, I want to thank you for saying all of that. I couldn't do it because my mouth gets very dry with all the pills I take.
She made the speech for you, okay. The sins that we're talking about here are sins that people have done, okay? And yes, maybe some of them actually kind of duplicate, the sins of God in some small way, What do you think about going back? I hate doing this, the sin, where it says that it's worse for a leader to commit a sin than because he's going to be emulated and an acknowledged leader must be even more careful not to fall into the trap of wrongdoing. Even sins committed unintentionally may lead others to do evil, for others are eager to point to such a person as their example when they sin. So when we see a leader doing something wrong, whether it's Putin or some other leader, we tend to look at them more harshly, I think, don't you? You know.
I got that advice when I ended up back in Connecticut doing a leadership thing. They said, now that you're the leader, you got to remember you're at a higher standard.
Right.
Good point.
Well, looking at it from just hypothetically, Putin sees himself as a leader with almost absolute power that he has managed to garner these last 30 years. He was head of KGB and during Stalin's era. So, I mean, this man knows the ins and outs of controlling people. And he looked at it as aggrandizing the Soviet Union and making it more powerful. And he sees that as a noble goal. And the fact that he has to kill many people and subject many people, well, that's part of the process as far as he's concerned. He doesn't think of that in terms of sin. And yet, from his standpoint, he's right. Might is right. And therefore, what he's doing is okay. The ones on the receiving end don't quite feel that way. And so it depends on which end of the spectrum you're looking at.
Donna, you have to unmute, Donna. Donna, you have to unmute.
Doing it.
There you go.
There we go. Sorry. A leader is not just somebody that's the head of a country. A leader is also a parent to the
Right.
children that they are raising. And so what they're asking or telling their children is wrong. And then if they do the same thing, then that leader is not, you could say it's failing or it's not what it should be. So it's not just the big leader of a country.
That's true.
That's true. I think of the parents of that boy who killed so many people and were
Yeah.
held accountable. Yes, but in this case, it is the civil law that has made them responsible for it. It was not certainly religion in this day and age. Perhaps in ancient times, they would have been held accountable, and they themselves might have been executed for permitting their child to murder so many people. Today, the legal system is different, and therefore we go through hoops much more than what they did years ago. Years ago, found guilty, off with his head. Today, not quite off with his head, but not so rapid.
Yeah, that's true. And you notice I picked Putin, so I'm trying to be conscientious here.
So noted.
Yeah, I found it really difficult to do this, to read through this and find, what I, could pull out of this, but what I really feel is the change that we have to look at from Torah to now and in the 21st century. It's a very different world of sin. The sin it's got so many different interpretations in it that we have more possibilities to sin now than people did years ago. Because it was a much more simplistic life then, and they didn't have the choices of sin. And I guess if you narrowed it down, they're all the same sins, but they're just more opportunities to do them.
Well,
But being a fan of the old westerns like Gunsmoke, they did have a court system as such, but many times when somebody did something or people thought that they did something horrendously bad, they didn't wait for the court system. They strung them up and hung them. And I think, oh, I wonder what if we did that today?
Yeah, vigilantes, as they were called. Yeah.
It was the law of the West or something, they called it actually.
Yeah, the Wild West.
Yeah.
Well, those were essentially sins against another person. But when you think of
Basically.
the complex society where we have corporations and financial systems, and then one
Yeah.
person like Bankman Fried, or is it Fried Bankman? I lost track. Robs people of millions of dollars, with one person has the ability to destroy the life of so many people. This is a sin on a whole colossal scale when you stop and think about it. It's just not one person against another. It is against a whole segment of society as such. And so I think these sins are even more horrible in their own way than some of the other sins here that are mentioned. To me, this is a whole nother ball game in terms of sinning. And I think it's much more devastating to our society as a whole.
And he's Jewish,
You
isn't he?
have your hand up, Minya?
Yes, I was gonna ask, have you watched any of the video games that kids play?
Oh, my God.
Talking about sin,
Oh,
you have people who were blown up,
oh,
shot
God, I
down.
watched Grand Theft Auto. I was watching it at someone's house and I was like, oh my God. And this is a kid, he's like in fourth grade maybe, and he's playing this thing. Wow. Steve.
Okay, referring to those video games, who is responsible for,
Oh,
creating them?
parents. The
Okay,
parents.
no, the creator of these games, they're sinners too.
Yeah.
Yes, but if you don't buy that game and let your child play with it, then that game would be poof, I mean, it would be all right. Adults might have it. But I was stunned with this child just sitting there. People are getting run over, they're getting shot, I mean, it was just on and on and on. Pillage. Yes.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
What's happening is you are inuring young people to violence. They
Yeah.
become so accustomed to seeing violence, even though it is not real, that
Right.
when they actually see it, it doesn't have the same emotional impact that it would have had when we were young. If we saw someone who was run over by a car, we were absolutely horrified or injured in some way. Today, you find people can be murdered, shot in the street, and people walk by. If you recall Kitty Genovese in New York City, where this woman was being brutalized, and people looked from the apartment houses looking down at her, nobody came to her aid at all. So even 30 years ago, people were already immune to feeling what would have been considered a normal emotional reaction. And the upshot today is we see millions of people being brutalized in one way or another as you watch the TV news. And we look at it and, yeah, we're watching a picture. It doesn't affect us at all. And we are becoming numb to human misery, and that I think is definitely a sin.
Steve.
Okay, I don't want to be political here, but is it a sin for Israel to commit these acts against the Hamas or the Palestinians, because what they did to us, we got to do to them? Is that a sin, or is that repaying for the sin that the others did?
What you have to, Steve, you have to realize who the Palestinians are, and there are no Palestinians. These are the people that have walked in the past into a pizza parlor during a school holiday that was full of mothers and children and killed them. They walked into a restaurant and shot it all up. These, I'm sorry to say, and I don't want to be political, and I don't think it is political, because they are treating these quote unquote Palestinians about that they are these innocent people, and they're not. So do I think that it's wrong what is going on? You can say every war is wrong, but Israel did not start this. And it was the quote unquote Palestinians, so to speak, with Hamas that did. So you have to say, well, is it a sin that they keep the hostages, that they murder the hostages, that they rape them? You know, this is getting into a situation that, as wars usually end up.
Minya?
I totally agree with Donna. But when you watch it on the news, and I guess I shouldn't be watching it anymore,
It's so
and they talk about all of the people in Gaza, no one mentions that the Hamas murderers, what they did to babies and children, no one addresses that. It's never on the news. It's only the people in Gaza are hungry. They don't have enough food. They have no place to live. Their lives have been turned upside down. But who started this, as Donna said? Hamas did. They killed innocent people who were at a musical concert, just went and killed them, threw bombs into shelters that they knew kids were trying to be safe in. No one addresses any of the horrors that they did. To me, that's like wartime, and certain things, and in their case, they should be treated, well, like they're never going to be treated, but they should be, it should be recognized that these were hostile people who were out to murder because their lifetime goal has been to get rid of Israel.
Absolutely. And not only to get rid of Israel, to get rid of the United States as well.
Yeah.
to get rid of Jewish people in general.
In general, absolutely. But yes.
You know, I've mentioned this once before, but during World War II, before your time, we Americans bombed the city of Dresden, Germany. We firebombed it and we burnt it down to nothing. And there was absolutely no hue and cry. It's true we were fighting against Germany, but thousands of children and women lost their lives. Remember, we dropped 2 atomic bombs on Japan. Nobody complained. There was nobody said anything. People were happy that it happened and the war was over. So why suddenly are we taking this attitude vis-a-vis Hamas and Israel? This is all part of war.
I heard this morning, actually, that Netanyahu, who is taking the brunt of this, I'm not saying he's Mr. Innocent, but he is taking the brunt. He said that they were going to evacuate Rafah and then march in. So I don't know. I mean, he's trying to appease the West and its attitudes. So I think you've got to let Israel do what Israel has to do. Donna.
Yes, what you're saying is Israel has always, in any of the wars, big or small, have always warned the people that they were coming.
Right.
They just didn't walk into houses and burn them and kill the people. And
They actually said they're going to evacuate them.
Yes.
In my mind,
Yeah.
those people would turn around and kill an Israeli soldier as well as look at them, but that's another story.
Yeah, absolutely. But Israel always tells them when they're coming. They have a chance to get out. They have a chance to whatever. If and so
Steve,
you know,
Okay.
I mean, you know,
Let's get back on the subject of sin though, because who's sinning who?
you're
is that a sin? Okay, is all this a sin? But
is,
We're
yes,
talking, yeah, so we're talking about wars, what somebody's,
Yeah.
fewer.
I understand that, but I mean, war is a sin as well, the way I look at it.
Yeah, but once it started,
So you would be a pacifist, then you never go to war, you never,
I would try to see things diplomatically rather than through violence.
I think
It's
many,
always been my thought.
I think many of the wars, and we may not know about it, people have tried. There were people that tried to do that, to do it diplomatically. And it
Well-
obviously grows into something that nobody really, well, there may be some people that do want them, and I think there are some people that make a lot of money off of them.
Oh,
But the average person, I don't think really wants wars.
no, when you have a person or group, a nation that wishes to be aggressive for conquest, either for economic reasons, for land reasons, for simply control of more territory, they are going to wage war. And their attitude is, I'm going to do it. I think of Chamberlain right before World War II, the British Prime Minister, who tried to appease Hitler. Peace in our time. Well, that was a bunch of rubbish because Hitler already knew what he was going to do, and he was simply appeasing the English, waiting, biding time. Meantime, he's ready to march into Czechoslovakia. So this business of diplomacy is just so much rot when it comes to waging war. Those who wish to wage war are going to do so. Either it's profitable as some, munitions manufacturing or what, or some companies benefiting from it. And so they will encourage aggression as such because they will profit from it. I think of Krupp Tyson, who the munitions maker in Germany, where yes, going to war was very profitable for them. So, okay,
some of them in this country too, right?
Oh, yes, look, we're
And so
supplying.
then, all right, now we've got Ukraine, and they're not fighting for a religious reason, they're fighting to keep their land, well, sort of, in Israel, that's sort of true too. But so now, but there isn't any religious background in there.
Yeah.
But are the Ukrainians wrong to stand up for their country, Steve, at that point when they're being invaded? So I mean, I don't know. I mean, I know what I think, but I don't think it's a sin for them to be fighting in this situation. So, there's that too. But I think we're taking this to a different level because we're talking about sin, person upon person sin, more than we are talking about an
The
international.
larger picture, yeah.
So,
There's
yes.
there's also what is a problem now in Israel is when the state was formed, the Orthodox were let out of having to fight or go to war. They were to go to
Right.
school, and now many people in Israel are thinking that the Orthodox should be out there fighting with their Jewish brothers for keeping of the land, because they would be certainly benefit from that. And now, so the rabbis are really coming out strong. No, we don't have to go to war. We don't have to go to war. We don't have to fight. We don't have to fight. But I can tell you that there are more and more Orthodox that are in when I left there, and they were in the army. And back in the 2006 war, they had many pictures of the Orthodox that were fighting. So,
That's interesting. Do they fight? Do they fight, or do they have non-combative positions?
well, there are always some like that, like a clerk or some such as that. But I don't think that they necessarily assign them to the Orthodox or whatever organization of the army that the people are in. And they are having more women serve in the combat units. I
Pam.
don't know if, I don't
Pam
know if
and
that
Richard.
takes, I
Pam.
don't know if that means that those women, agree to do that or volunteer to do that. I don't know.
Oh, Richard left us. I thought maybe that's what he had to say.
Probably
Pam.
so.
Pam,
My turn. So it's my understanding when we were in Israel, they told us the Orthodox do not have to participate at all in the military at all.
Right, absolutely.
Is that still the case?
As far as I know.
Okay.
And,
it's coming up that they want to change the laws about that, and that's why it's in the news lately, because I saw it too.
Yeah.
but as I say, there are more Orthodox that are volunteering and going.
Okay. So, just as a question to throw out, because I think we're almost at the end of our discussion here. Do you, as a as a class of people here, do you feel that if you know that you've committed a sin in your mind, a sin that you admit to yourself that this is a sin, do you feel guilt about it, or you just say whatever? You know? So I know I have guilt about things. I still think about things in past years that I say, oh, I should have. What do you think, Pam?
I have short-term guilt.
What term? Yeah.
What does that mean? Just for the moment?
For the day.
Okay.
I doubt if it was anything that terrible too. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
Donna,
Well, just this past week, one of my daughters said that she and her husband went to Vincent's for dinner on a certain night. They know that Vincent's is one of my favorite restaurants. And I said, oh my goodness, why did you go? Well, it happened to be their anniversary. And I had totally forgotten about this. I said, what do you mean I forgot? I did that, I forgot. And so, of course, I rushed home, addressed the card, put a little gift inside, and dropped it in the mail. And I thought, this is really terrible, because I have a little thing on my desk that has everybody's birthdays in it and anniversaries in it, and I just neglected to look at it. And so, yeah, short-term memory, yeah.
what's your guilt? Yeah.
I fixed it. But there are sometimes some things in raising my kids that, not that I did anything horribly wrong, but that I would have done differently if I could go back and do them again. And is that
So,
guilt? I'm not
Good
sure.
point. I think we all have that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's hindsight, because you saw the result of your decision, whereas you can't envision what might have happened if you had made a different decision. So it's unfair, I think, to feel guilt about something like that. You did what you thought at the time was the best decision to make for your family. And so my feelings are, I did the best that I thought at the time with my experience, my husband's experience. We discussed it. We made a decision. We did what we thought was right. And so if the result was not what we had desired at all, tough, that's life. What can you do? You know, you can't control every result, no matter what it is you think you can do and plan. Something always transpires, and it is the personality of the individual that you feel you're steering in the right direction, but you don't know the quirks of that individual's mind that will take them off somewhere in a direction you never expected. So don't feel guilty. I mean, you did your best, and that absolves me as far as I'm concerned.
Steve, you had your hand up too? Steve?
No.
No? Okay. Steve is guilt-free.
I doubt that. Not in the eyes of God
Or Bob.
or Bob. That's true.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we all have things that we coulda, woulda, shoulda, something like that, so if that's the expression, I don't know, but sometimes, I think back, oh, what if I had, now you got your hand up.
Okay, well, I was just gonna say, do you want to start summarizing what we
Yeah.
discussed today?
So basically, to my mind, what I get out of this, it was like that was then and this is now. And our perception of sin is different now than what it was at that
Yeah.
time. Does anybody else have anything they want to add to it?
No,
I
No.
agree,
You agree?
I
Yeah,
agree.
yeah,
okay. Yeah. And today the temple is having that that
Oh,
constitutional
meeting,
amendment vote. Yeah, this
yeah,
afternoon. So
I
I
turned my
voted.
vote in yesterday.
Yeah, I dropped my vote off, but be interesting to see what they come up with. Yeah, right. And okay, and what are you smiling about over there, Pam?
Nothing.
Okay, all right,
Mumbling to myself.
okay. We're gonna do the prayer.
Oh,
Pam?
sure, let's do the prayer. It'd be a sin if we didn't.
Oh, definitely.
Okay, let's start beginning. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natamanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam natanu. Okay, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu haTorah.
bless.
Blessed is Adonai our God, ruler of the universe, who has given us the teaching of truth, and planted within us eternal life. Blessed is Adonai, giver of the Torah. Amen.
Okay. Be
Thank
well,
you.
everybody.
Bye, all.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Marcia.
Marcia, for leading us. You did a good job.
Thank you, Marcia.
Yeah, I
Thanks,
thought
Marcia.
it was such a tough one, and I thought that that Fields was not very helpful.
Well, that's what we have the internet.
Yeah, okay, all right,
All right,
Bye-bye.
everyone, have a good rest of the day and we'll see you soon. Take care.
bye-bye,
Peace
Bye.
and fullness. Bye.
bye-bye.
Good job,
Bye.
Marcia.
Thank you.